Hi, I'm Michael Jacobsen, and welcome to this episode of The Business of Creativity. Today, we're talking to one of Britain's top-rated radio personalities, Angie Greaves. Angie is not only a top-rated radio personality, but she also has a business, angiegreaves.com, and offers lifestyle advice, book clubs, travel advice, and a raft of other things, all aimed at uplifting and inspiring people. Angie herself is uplifting and inspiring, and manages to combine her job as a top media personality with her other part of her life as an entrepreneur, which in itself is not easy. Let's chat with Angie Greaves and see what she has to say about the business of creativity. Angie Greaves, top-rated magic radio personality, entrepreneur. Thanks for joining the business of creativity today.
Thank you for asking me, Michael. Thank you.
Angie, you literally are one of the top female radio presenters in the world. You're presenting a #1 afternoon program in London, which of course is one of the top media cities in the world.
Yeah.
So therefore, by definition, one of the top media personalities in the world.
I like the way you put that.
Well, it's true. How did this come about? What's the journey led up to that?
Years ago, I walked into a radio station. It was purely for 1 year. The mission was to create some finance to go to teacher training college. And I realised after 18 months, 2 years, I was still there. The money that I thought I wanted to create to go on to do the job it went to the back of my mind. Something creative kicked in. And I just found that I was at this radio station a lot longer than I had planned to be. Media wasn't actually in my thoughts, but you get into a zone and you become like a duck to water.
Yes.
And even though I was doing administrative work at the time, I was asked to do some voiceovers, I was asked to read scripts. If there were adverts being read, I was asked, can you read this and be the guide? And I just found it came very, very naturally. So before I knew it, I was just at this radio station, didn't want to leave. And it just felt right.
Interesting you were training for teaching.
Yeah, absolutely.
In some ways, it's also a communication vocation, but in a different way now.
Well, I actually think that my gift is communication. So even though I would have been communicating to students, I just communicate to a wider audience now.
Yes.
So I think the core was the communication. Maybe the knowledge or the love at the time was teaching, but that core was just, it just banged in, it was just there.
And how have you worked on your career? I mean, how do you go from then the passion was sparked, you found that this is what was turning your heart on.
Yeah.
How did you then create a program where it's so highly rated and you're a media personality?
I got to be really honest with you, Michael. I don't feel as if I've done a day's work in my life.
Yes.
I don't think everything fell into my lap, but I do think that there was a light, a spark, a passion that decision makers picked up and said, let's try Angie for that job. I don't feel that I made this career myself. There was just something. If I could find the right adjective, I would tell you what it is.
Yes.
I can remember leaving the first radio station. It was actually Capital at the time. And I can remember saying to the boss at the time, "You will employ me again." And he was like, yeah. And he said, go off and make your mistakes and come back. And I started doing radio on some small AM stations. And then there was a station called Choice FM that came up on the dial. I got the job there. I still carried on doing administrative work. I only had one show a week on Choice FM, and that was midnight till 2 on a Friday. And I was really, really happy with that. But then the breakfast presenter was going away and nobody else was around to do this breakfast show. So I jumped in.
Yes.
Reluctantly, but something just kicked in. The passion, the spark just kicked in. And the bosses just said, listen, you need to stay on this show.
Yes. And you've been able to allow it, as it were, to get out of your own way and let it happen.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to force something else
absolutely.
to happen.
I mean, it just breathed. I was very much at home for that initial big gig because it was a Caribbean station, so I could talk about all the islands of the Caribbean. I could, it just was like a hand in glove. But with all things, they have a season. So I decided to move on. I had my children, I was freelancing, I did some work at the BBC. I also did talk radio as well, did some LBC. And then I was freelancing at Jazz FM. And you know, there is something that you call a full circle.
Yes.
I needed a telephone number for somebody. The only person I could think of that had that number was the very same boss at Capital who said to me, when I said, you will hire me again, that laughed. He was the only person that had the number. And I called him, and he was listening to me. And he wasn't working for the station that I was working on.
Okay.
So when I asked, why are you listening to me? He said, because it's my job to check out the competition. Straight away I said, right, let's have lunch.
Right.
And it just is something that just evolved. It grew. From a small seed, it just opened up. And my love of communication, whether it was on talk radio, Caribbean radio, mainstream radio, the music is one element and the music is healing, but it's the communication.
Yes.
Because it doesn't matter what your musical taste is. It's about communicating to that person, whether they're at home, whether they're in the car, whether they're in the shops. It doesn't matter. It's that communicative energy that drives through. And I think that's what's really kept me going, just feeding the passion of the communicative spirit.
And I think from what I can hear from what you're saying is that there's also a great difference between working hard, which no doubt you do, but also forcing something. A lot of people think that they are governed by sending 10,000 emails a day, and really you got to fall into your bed at night absolutely exhausted, and that means that you're progressing in life. Whereas
nothing
you can actually
could be
work
further
hard.
from the truth.
Yes.
I recently read Arianna Huffington's book about sleep.
Yes.
And it's really interesting how we deprive ourselves of feeding our creative spirit because of the lack of sleep that we have. And the myth that if we're not sending those emails in bed at 11 o'clock at night, we're not doing our job. The best thing you can do is set a time, half an hour before you're meant to go to sleep, leave whatever it is that you're doing, go to sleep and wake up refreshed.
Yes.
Your body would have repaired itself. Your mind isn't racing so much. So no, nothing could be further from the truth about, this myth of always sending emails at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. That's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What a lot of people don't know about you is that you're also an entrepreneur, and you've got a lifestyle brand to your business. You've got books and travel divisions.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about how that arose and what's your vision for that?
I found when I hit a certain age, and there's nothing wrong with aging. I mean, I love the fact that I'm a woman. I'm 50. I love it. Your life starts to evolve. You start to see things around you that maybe you didn't notice as much. So I love traveling.
Yes.
Any opportunity to get on an aeroplane, I am there. I love Barbados. And I just found when I was going to Barbados, I was always doing the same things. Whereas I found the last time I went to Barbados, didn't tell any of my family I was there, and I just relaxed. And it was lovely. And that it was nice to write about that. It was nice to, do a little video blog about that. Books have always been my passion. My father was my first teacher and author. He taught me to read and write before I could start school. So I could write my name, I could write Angela Diana Greaves before I started school. I mean, it looked like spiders.
The communication spirit.
There you go. I mean, it looked like spiders on a page, but I could write my name before I started school. I could write from 1 to 25 before I started school. Wow. So all these communicative lines were inbred in me long before I'd even started work. So, and I was always told reading is the best pastime because it creates knowledge, it exercises your brain. We seem to forget that our brain is a muscle, and it needs to be exercised, and reading is one of the best ways to exercise your brain. Thinking about things that you cannot control is a waste of time.
Absolutely.
So my dad always used to drive it in me, so reading was always one of my best pastimes. And then I created a love of authors because it amazed me that as an author you could sit in an assigned place if that's how you wrote. So let's take Marianne Keyes. She has an area in her bedroom at home, a desk where she writes. And when her writing's completed, it's amazing. Those writings resonate with people all over the world. So my love of books was born through writers like Marianne Keyes, and one specific book called Acts of Faith by Ian Van Zandt. I was going through a very, very rough time. I was in Atlanta. A friend of mine said to me, on your way home, stop at this bookshop, pick up something to read. And I just found, I picked up the book because it was purple, which is my favourite colour. And I started reading this book and was just amazed at how the words were completely resonating my life.
Yeah, a good book can be transformational.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I shared my love of this book on Choice FM, and that actually resulted in Ian Van Zandt and I meeting.
Wow.
Because somebody from the States was in London and said, you need to call this girl Angie Greaves. She's reading, she's reading your book on air. And I think that's...
Okay, full circle again.
It's full circle again. So, and the power of communication, because I didn't know Ianla.
Yes.
I just saw the book. And the power of her words that I chose to communicate through the mic resulted in us meeting. And she's now on the Oprah Winfrey show.
Amazing.
So, the power of words, the power of communication, it's beautiful. I love it.
That's amazing.
Love
and
it.
the lifestyle part of your business?
Yeah. So food, I think that we are sometimes governed by the pace of life, which governs how we also eat. So I found, especially when I was doing drive time on Magic, preparing meals was secondary, I hasten to say, but it was the truth. I find now that I'm doing 2 till 5, I go home and I prepare meals, better for your lifestyle, better for your sleep, better for your body, everything, and just buying vegetables and as opposed to buying ready-made meals. So I found that food was a big thing. I found as well that even makeup, just general well-being, general feeling good about yourself, because my tagline is feeling fab. And it's all those things that you're passionate about that you encapsulate in your life that do make you feel good. Now, I love a burger from time to time, but I just find a burger every day, by the end of the week, I'm not feeling good at all.
No.
So it's about taking that time out to actually invest in yourself and feel good about yourself, investing in your time, your health, your mind, your body, your spirit, everything. Because we need to not just assume that life is about getting up, going to work, coming home. I don't believe that's what life is about.
How bland would that be?
Absolutely. What a sad day that we've all, a percentage of us have come to the belief that life is about going to work and paying bills.
Yes.
It is so
and
not.
living for the weekend.
It is so not that. It is so not that. And that was a major transition for me when Magic were magnificent enough to give me the option to change my hours. I now broadcast better.
Yes.
But I get in early because I've got the option to leave at 5 and go home and be with my girls and my husband. And it's amazing how if you really plan your life and not let life plan you, it's the transition is just amazing.
It is. And so really what you're doing with all of these what could apparently look disparate parts of the business, they're actually very connected in terms of the vision for uplifting people and creating wellness amongst people and creating inspiration amongst people.
So like I always go back to communication and the spoken word, the book. So you can have books about food, you can have books about wellness, books about lifestyle, books about hair and beauty, books about family. It all seems to come back to that communicative spirit, that power of communication.
And with all of these different activities that you're involved in, what's your inspiration?
What or who?
What or who?
Oh, what's my inspiration? Just to be content. I'm not saying I don't want to be happy, but I think that the opposite of happy is being unhappy, and I don't want to be unhappy.
Yes.
I think if you can find a realistic place of being content, when something happens that you don't like, instead of creating merry hell and whatever, learn from it. Sometimes that's not something that comes very easily, and I think that's a skill you have to learn. The child in me used to get very, very angry if I didn't get what I wanted. But I now find that just accepting that not everything is going to come your way when you want it is actually a gift. Because if you can stay still enough to accept, okay, this has happened. Why has it happened? Why has that person let me down? What can I learn from this? And I know these all sound like major cliches, but it's true.
Yes, it is true.
It's very, very true. And I get that from a lot of TV programs I watch, I've got to say, from the States. I'm not saying that British TV doesn't offer that, but I love watching Ellen DeGeneres.
Yes, I love Ellen.
Pure sunshine.
Yes.
You know, if I'm in a bad mood, I find by the time I've watched Ellen, I am no longer...
And very authentic too.
Oh.
Totally authentic.
No longer in a bad mood.
No.
And there's a woman who, in her 50s, just completely took off and gave her gift to the world.
Yes.
Oprah Winfrey, of course, who has given so much joy to so many people. And I think made inspiration, mindfulness, spirituality modern and not so rigid.
Yes, absolutely. It's very integrated into the mainstream.
Yeah, very much so.
Yes.
And, you know, even writers like Shonda Rhimes, who writes Scandal and How to Get Away with Murder and Grey's Anatomy. I recently read her book, The Year of Yes. And the minute she stopped hiding behind her fears and the minute she said, yes, I'm going to do it, things just opened up.
Yes.
But she still has time for her family.
Yes.
She still has time for her children. She still has time for herself. And that's the importance. Not doing it all. Knowing who to delegate to, when to delegate. And having a really good, trusted team around you who are good at their skills, but are also passionate at their skills.
Yes.
And have the same insight as you do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, we've all got bills to pay.
Absolutely.
But, yes, and money's very important.
Yes, it is.
I want to ask you what your position is and your day-to-day feeling with regards to the businesses that you're creating and the job that you're doing, and money, because really we all have our art.
Absolutely.
Especially in the creative sector, our art, and then the commercial aspect of life.
Yeah.
What's the mix and how does it fit for you?
Well, I am very blessed that I earn a good salary through radio, and a percentage of that salary can go into my business, which is just starting to monetize. It took time. One of the major mistakes that I made when I first launched the website was to chase money. If somebody said, right, I'll pay you to do X amount, or I'll pay you to do that blog, I'd do it. And then there were times I'd think, well, hang on a minute, you're not speaking my language.
Yeah.
So you're diluting my message. And even if I'm not giving a message, when people go to my website, especially the way it currently is, everyone says there's a feel, there's a warmth, there's something there, and all of the blogs all tie into each other. So it's about staying true to your message. It's about staying true to your craft. And it's about putting your best and your strongest gift first.
Yes.
Someone sitting very, very near to me told me that not long ago. That wasn't a language that I understood when I decided to start my website, because in my mind, I would open the microphone, say something, and I'd get a response. So what's the problem?
Yes.
But I think when you come out from what I will call the corporate umbrella, although I don't feel that I've actually worked a day in my life in the corporate sector, there's a different energy when you're doing something as yourself.
Yes.
So even though I know people listen to me and they are at work, some people are at home, there are parents, stay-at-home parents, people doing the school run, and even though I know they're listening to me, and even though I know all these different people, genres of people, ages, sexualities, they're all listening to me, when I close that mic, Angela, on the pages of her website, still has to continue without the guise of radio.
Yes.
Am I making sense?
Yes.
So Angela, the heart of Angela, has to be on that website. And that's why putting Arianna Huffington's book on my website fits, because Angela, the guise of Angela,
Yes.
is there.
It's purely driven by your energy and your energy
Absolutely,
alone,
absolutely.
rather than the energy of the organisation.
Right. If I was to put a book up that just wasn't me, people would know.
They feel it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
People would know, definitely.
Yes.
They'd know. If I was to put up a recipe right now that was completely, filled with sugar, filled with... People would know. They'd say Angie's being paid a lot of money for that. And if it's not true, they'd just log off.
That's right. People can sense it and they can smell it.
Definitely, definitely. And I think that's something that you learn. I think it's something that grows within you. And as it grows within you, you learn to be true to that feeling. So it may be that I haven't earned what I was planning to earn this month on the site. And I could say, oh, I must ignore that feeling. I'm going to do that blog. Ignoring that blog and staying true to that feeling, you could earn double the following month.
Yes, that's right.
Because somebody, that blog that's not true to you could block somebody reading it. It could block a potential investor. It could block a potential brand partnership.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely right.
So,
yes. So you have to just keep doing it anyway. Of course, you have to keep
absolutely.
your eye on the money and on the numbers.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you can't get too caught up in it.
No, you can't. You can't.
Right. What's your creative process? Because everybody in the creative sector, particularly performers or people in a media role, but certainly I think also people in a business role and those running creative businesses have a process and have some kind of way that they can get in the zone or in the flow or all the different names that people call it. You could be having the most rushed day, you could be racing around, going to the dry clean and doing normal human things. And then at 2 o'clock, you've got to be on air and you've got to be calming to people.
Absolutely.
How do you achieve that?
I used to get into work about half an hour before my show, and I just used to physically do what was meant to be done. So get my weather sorted, get my items sorted, right, Robbie Williams, whoever I'm playing, quickly Google something about that person, and off I went. Mm-hmm. I found that my figures went up when I got into work earlier. 2 hours.
So it actually had an impact on the ratings?
Absolutely. Absolutely. 2 hours, hour and a half before. I like to give myself 90 minutes minimum. I like to get into the office. I like to get a feel of what's happening in the office. Sometimes that link about somebody that made you laugh could resonate with somebody else in their office. Yes. So coming in and just getting on with the show, it worked, but I found that the show was more meaningful when I applied myself more before I went on air. So I give myself time to think about what I'm doing, like I say, to ask people what's happening in the office, to find out what's happening on other radio stations within the group, in the building. It's amazing how linking it all makes for a more authentic show and makes for a more honest show as well, because you're not just going through the motions.
Yes.
When I get up in the morning, I've only got one daughter left at school now, and she's very self-sufficient. So once the girls have gone, once my hubby's gone to work, I tend to listen to a lot of relaxing music, or I tend to listen to a lot of gospel. Mm-hmm. I used to go out walking a lot. Now that the weather's better, I just go around the block. I walk, it clears my head, and you just find that it's easier then to process your day. You can prioritise. You might have 50 things. I might have 50 things to do before I go to work. If I get up and start getting on with those 50 things, it's just stress.
Yeah.
It just stresses you out. Whereas I find if I take time for myself, those 50 things, 40 of them might not even be necessary.
Yeah, and you do them a lot quicker, I'm sure, when you're in the right mindset.
And you just clear your head, and 9 times out of 10, you ring somebody and you say, listen, I was meant to get that email to you today, I was meant to get that report to you today. And they'll go, sorry, what email was that? What report? Whereas if you're stressing yourself out, it doesn't help. It doesn't help at all. Every Tuesday, my AngieGreaves.com team and I, we have a Skype meeting every Tuesday without fail. We talk a lot every day via email, on the phone, but every Tuesday we say, right, what is the plan for AngieGreaves.com this week? Who do we want to talk to? Who do we want to touch? Who do we want to inspire? What book do we want to do that? Sometimes we might do a book a week. Sometimes it's better to do one book a month and let that book resonate for the month. Sometimes it might be that we choose a colour for the month. You know, colours speak a lot of languages,
yes.
yeah? So we plan every week what we're going to do, and then the third week of the month, Aisha she presents the strategy for the following month. So you can't do it all on your own, and that's another thing that I realised, because I'm an octopus, I'm perfect, I can,
Yes.
You can't. You
Certainly
will.
when you're running a business.
Yeah, you'll burn out.
Yeah, you will burn out.
You'll burn out, and it's amazing how you think you're doing well, and that one email to that one person with one typo, could be a tiny typo, could slow things down.
Slow things down.
So it's very, very important, I think, to feed yourself first. It's not being selfish, it's being sensible.
So this really applies across your whole life, as well as your job, as well as your
Definitely.
business.
Definitely.
And how do you switch between mindsets? Because with regards to your core job, working at Magic, and then the rest of the time you're running angiegreaves.com, encompassing the books and the lifestyle and the travel. One's part of a corporation, which we touched on before, and one is you in charge of your own team. Is there a particular mindset shift that you're going through between entrepreneur and corporation?
I do very much feel that when I'm at Magic, I'm at Magic. So 9 times out of 10, what I'm doing there is for the brand, and I give myself to that brand. My assumption is they're happy with what I'm giving, because I still worked for the brand. When I'm in radio zone, that's when Aisha and Amy and Abby, so that's my PA, my social media lady, and my features writer, they will accumulate a lot of the work, and then at the end of the day, I have an email that I will read through on the way home, so that when I get home, I've got time with the girls.
Yep.
Or I might read that email when the girls are in bed, or we've had family time, or when I'm on my own. So they will accumulate a lot of the stuff, which I will then read.
Yes.
Out of Magic. You can't.
So you're not mixing the energies.
It's too much. It's too much. And if
I think it's very important because a lot of people, especially creative businesses or creative startup businesses they may have also a job which they're using to support the infancy of their business. So I think it's very important that people understand how you can achieve both.
Yes. And the beauty of my colleagues is they give me a specific amount of time per day. They have other clients, so they know, and let's say it's an hour a day, they might do half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the evening, they might do 1 hour. How they utilize that time, I give them the option to do that the best way they can, because me instructing them to do something, if they're not in the zone, they're going to do it.
They're not going to do it
They're not going to do it as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So a lot of their time is utilised while I'm at Magic. And then, like I say, in the evening, I will get an email that shows me what their thoughts are, should we go this way, should we go that way? And then it's that Tuesday meeting when 7 o'clock, Tuesday evening, when I'm in Angie zone. My daughter works late on a Tuesday, hubby's watching football, my younger daughter, she goes to one of her dance classes, so I'm just in Angie zone, and that's when we as a team, we then get together.
And
yes,
creative sector, we're here in London.
Yes.
One of the creative capitals of the world.
Yes,
in fact,
indeed.
The creative sector in the UK, worth £86 billion a year. A lot of people don't know it is the top sector in the country.
Right.
But yet there's a disconnect, I always find, between investors and the financial community who don't understand necessarily the creative sector and who don't really recognise it as a solid business. And simultaneously there's a lot of people in the creative sector who could do a lot better to understand the language of business if they want to be communicating with investors or business or taken seriously as business people.
Yeah.
And so therefore it's actually quite amazing that it is such a huge sector in this country when you don't have the full-on support of the financial sector.
But you made a statement there which was really interesting, the language of business, the language of finance. Let's go to finance first. I think we're programmed into believing from we're little go to school, get some qualifications, get a job, get the best paying job you can. And so you've got a lot of creative people chasing money, and they're running so much after that money, they've left their creative skills behind.
Yes.
They're way down the road. And what they're actually presenting, when they get to the destination and ask the person for the money, they're so worn out
Yes.
that they're not even speaking their creative language because they've left their creative skills back at home.
Right,
And what's
yes.
also worse is if you don't understand the language of money and how money it churns. You'll never be out of money. You may not have the amounts you want. And this is something that I've learned very recently. You may never have the amounts you want, but you'll never be out of money.
That's right. It's quite rare. I mean, I don't,
Yeah.
the risk of being disrespectful
You'll
to people
always,
who might be homeless or so. It is quite rare that people are totally out of money, because we all seem to have a way of regenerating, don't we?
Absolutely. And I think if you can grasp the language and the way money works, and yes, it does help when you've got a regular salary, but starting a business doesn't necessarily mean starting with money.
No. Well,
Starting
Mark Zuckerberg didn't have a regular salary when he was
starting
in
a
his dormitory,
business I think starts with an idea.
did he? Yes.
And as you say, Mark Zuckerberg, he was on his computer creating a program that he could talk to different friends, because the campus was so large, they all were talking to each other through this computer program, which is now Facebook.
That's right.
He was a student.
Yes.
So I think the language of money is something you definitely have to learn. And I think the language of money is something, once you've grasped it, it's an understanding that having a lot of it does not necessarily mean that you are successful. And I think also what you deem as a lot of money and what I deem as a lot of money, it could be poles apart.
Yes. You've got to measure it by your own
Absolutely.
benchmark.
I said to my daughter when I first was teaching her how to save, if I gave you £100, what would you do with it? Oh my gosh, Mum!
Yes.
So to a child, £100.
Yes.
But like I say, to somebody else, if I gave you £100 now and you weren't expecting it, the energy of that £100 could be exactly the same as somebody who's setting up a multi-million-pound block of flats.
That's right. The energy that it carries with it.
Who thinks, right, I need 10 million, and they get it. Do you know what I mean?
That's right.
But it's a language that took me a long, long time to learn, because I think we base our salaries on our worth.
Yes.
And a lot of the time, if we were to remove ourselves from the comfort of our salaries and really hone our skills in elsewhere, we could earn a lot more.
Yes, well, it's certainly one of the best ways to become entrepreneurial when you don't have a salary every month. But on the other hand, I think just to wrap up here, I think with a lot of the creative people, and as a final message to them, they may or may not have other jobs. A lot of people who undertaking arts or crafts, or aspiring musicians, particularly in this country, a lot of them may have other jobs, and they might not be jobs that they're as passionate about as you are about magic. They might have a job which is a part-time job, And so, what I think is important for them, and I'd like to hear your thoughts in closing, is how they can ultimately migrate full-time to their business if they're not passionate about their job, and how they think about that. And what I mean by that is, my message anyway, is that if you love something, you should be able to do it full-time if you choose to, or if it's not synergistic. What you're doing is synergistic with magic.
Yes.
What somebody's doing, if they're doing a particular job that they don't like, might be totally unsynergistic with working in arts or crafts or music. So how can someone get their mindset right to make a living doing what they love? Now,
that is a question. I'm going to be really honest. I don't have the out and out answer, because like you say, what I'm doing is synergistic. I will say this, I've never known such a time where so much creativity is just out there. And I do believe that social media and the internet has got a lot to do with that. I've never known a time where so many graduates who can't get jobs end up starting businesses
Yes.
via social media that have got nothing to do with what they studied at university.
Yes.
Now, where that energy comes from, it could be that you're rock bottom and you go, do you know what, I've just got to do it. And you have to get yourself in the mindset that you're going to do it. But it's amazing how many businesses, young kids, I mean, even my daughter wants to start her own makeup range. You know, it's amazing how that creative bubble, it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And, you know, people, even people of a certain age, because there are men and women now who, once again, through social media, they're not retiring.
Yes.
They've worked all their lives and they've got to retirement age and thought, you know what, I wish I could start a flower business. Go online, put up a little website, start a Facebook page, go onto Instagram, and before you know it, you're just starting a business. You're just oozing your passion.
Oozing your passion.
Oozing your passion.
It reminds me of that great expression that whether you think you can do something or you can't do it, you're right.
Yeah.
You just
ooze your passion.
That's great.
Absolutely.
I'm going to borrow that.
You borrow it.
Angie Greaves, it's been an inspiration having you on the Business
Michael.
of Creativity. Thank you.
Thank you.